Picture two women reaching down to touch the floor without bending their knees. One does it without a second thought. The other stops halfway, her hips refusing to cooperate, her back tightening in protest. They're roughly the same age. The difference between them has very little to do with luck and almost nothing to do with genetics. It has to do with something far less glamorous, what their bodies have been asked to do every single day for decades. If you're somewhere between 40 and 70, you've probably noticed your body doesn't move quite the way it used to. Getting up from a low chair takes a small negotiation with your knees. Sitting cross-legged on the floor for more than a few minutes starts to feel like an athletic event rather than something you did without thinking as a child. This isn't a personal failing, and it isn't simply getting older in some vague, unavoidable way. A lot of it comes down to habit, repetition, and the environment you move through every day. This video isn't about telling you that Japanese women have some biological advantage, or that they're all the same, or that they've discovered a secret the rest of the world missed. What's actually going on is more interesting and more useful than that. In many parts of Japan, daily life still quietly demands the kind of movement that most modern homes and routines elsewhere have slowly removed. Not through deliberate exercise, but through ordinary, unremarkable habits repeated thousands of times over a lifetime. Let's look at what those habits actually are, because every one of them is something you can adapt, regardless of where you live. The first habit is something many people in Japan do without even thinking of it as exercise. A short routine of stretches and gentle movements, often done first thing in the morning, sometimes in a park alongside neighbors, sometimes alone in a living room. It's called Radio Taiso, and it's been part of daily life there since the late 1920s, originally broadcast over the radio and still practiced today by people of all ages, including many older adults. It typically takes only a few minutes, arm circles, gentle twists, light stretching, a few controlled squats. None of it is intense. None of it requires equipment. What it does, consistently, is remind the body every single day that it's capable of a full range of motion. A woman anywhere in the world could build something similar into her own morning, 5 minutes of gentle stretching and light movement before the day gets busy, not as a workout, but as a quiet daily check-in with her own body. The second habit is less about doing something extra and more about what a lot of Japanese homes simply don't have as much of: high furniture. In many traditional households, tables sit low to the ground, and floor cushions or thin mats take the place of a Western-style sofa or dining chair. This means getting down to the floor and back up again happens repeatedly throughout an ordinary day, at every meal, every time you sit to talk with family, every time you get comfortable in the evening. That repeated motion, done without any thought of it as training, is functionally very similar to the kind of hip and knee mobility exercises a physical therapist might specifically prescribe to someone trying to regain that ability later in life. The difference is that in a home designed this way, nobody has to remember to practice it. Life does it for you. This is genuinely something you can bring into your own life, wherever you are. You don't need a Japanese-style home to try it. Something as simple as choosing to sit on a cushion on the floor a few times a week, instead of always reaching for the chair or the couch, and consciously practicing getting up and down without using your hands for support, can begin to rebuild some of that same functional strength and confidence. It's worth being honest that if you already have joint pain, arthritis, or a diagnosed mobility condition, this kind of practice should be approached carefully, and it's worth checking with a doctor or physical therapist before making it a regular habit, especially if getting up from the floor currently feels difficult or unsafe. The third habit is a small detail that surprises a lot of people: the traditional squat toilet still found in some homes, train stations, and older buildings across Japan, alongside the more common Western-style toilets most visitors expect. Using one requires a full, deep squat, the same movement pattern many personal trainers spend months trying to help clients relearn. It's not something anyone chooses as exercise. It's simply part of using the bathroom in certain settings. Fewer and fewer homes have them today, and this habit is fading even within Japan itself. But it's a clear example of how an ordinary daily task can either preserve a movement pattern or let it disappear, depending entirely on the environment. You don't need a squat toilet to benefit from the same idea. Practicing a supported squat at home, holding onto a countertop or a sturdy chair if needed, for even a few repetitions a day, works the same muscles and joints. The fourth habit is walking, but not in the sense of a scheduled workout. In much of Japan, particularly in cities, daily life simply involves more walking than many places elsewhere, largely because public transportation is extensive and reliable, and many errands are done on foot rather than by car. Walking to a train station, walking between shops, walking up and down stairs at a station instead of relying on an elevator, all of this adds up over the course of an ordinary day, without anyone thinking of it as getting steps in. For someone living somewhere more car-dependent, this is one of the easier habits to intentionally recreate. Parking a little farther away, taking the stairs when there's a reasonable option, or building a short walk into your morning or evening routine doesn't require a gym membership or a training plan. It just requires deciding on purpose, to walk a little more than convenience would otherwise allow. The fifth habit shows up especially in older generations: time spent gardening, tending small plots of vegetables, or working close to the ground in other ways. This kind of activity involves a lot of bending, crouching, and reaching, done at a gentle pace over an extended period rather than all at once. It's the kind of movement that keeps hips, knees, and lower backs mobile without ever feeling like a workout, because the focus is on the tomatoes or the weeds, not on the body doing the work. If gardening isn't part of your life, something as simple as tending a few potted plants on a balcony or spending time on the floor playing with grandchildren or pets can offer a similar kind of low-intensity, functional movement. What ties all 5 of these together is something worth sitting with for a moment. None of them are exercise programs. None of them require a gym, special clothing, or blocking out 30 minutes in an already full day. They're just ordinary tasks, repeated consistently in an environment that happens to demand a fuller range of motion than many modern homes and routines do. That's actually good news, because it means the goal isn't to adopt an entirely new, demanding lifestyle. It's to notice the small ways your own daily environment might be quietly working against your mobility and to make a few small, deliberate adjustments. Consider a woman named Yuki in her late 60s who still gets down to a low table for tea most afternoons, still tends a small vegetable patch behind her house, and still walks to the market most days rather than driving. She has never done a formal exercise class in her life. She would probably be surprised to hear herself described as disciplined or athletic. From her perspective, she's just living her life the way she always has. But the accumulation of those ordinary choices, repeated for decades, is very likely part of why she moves through her 60s with a kind of ease that many people lose much earlier. It's also worth saying that this isn't only about Japan, and it would be misleading to suggest otherwise. Plenty of cultures around the world have their own version of this same principle, whether it's communities where walking and cycling remain the primary way to get around, households where floor seating is still common, or simply families where physical work outdoors is part of daily life rather than something scheduled separately. The point isn't that one country holds the answer. It's that wherever daily life still asks the body to move through its full range, that ability tends to stick around longer, almost as a side effect of ordinary living rather than a deliberate health strategy. None of this means genetics, individual health conditions, or personal circumstances don't matter, because they absolutely do. And mobility challenges can have many different causes that have nothing to do with lifestyle choices. If you're dealing with a specific injury, a chronic condition, or persistent pain, these ideas aren't a substitute for medical guidance, and it's always worth talking to a doctor or physical therapist about what's realistic and safe for your particular situation. It's also fair to say that not every one of these 5 habits needs to be adopted all at once, and trying to overhaul your entire home and routine in a single week is more likely to lead to frustration than lasting change. Choosing just one, whether it's 5 minutes of morning stretching, sitting on the floor a few evenings a week, or adding a short walk to part of your day, and sticking with it consistently for a month, tends to matter far more than attempting all 5 imperfectly and giving up after a few days. What this really comes down to is a simple, hopeful idea. Mobility isn't something that only belongs to your 20s, and it isn't something that disappears on a fixed schedule as you age. It responds gradually and imperfectly to what you continue to ask of it. You don't need to recreate someone else's home, someone else's country, or someone else's daily routine to benefit from this. You just need to look honestly at your own days and ask where a chair has replaced a floor, where a car has replaced a walk, where convenience has quietly replaced movement, and choose, in small and sustainable ways, to ask a little more of your body again. Because in the end, staying agile at 60, 70, and beyond was never really about a secret from the other side of the world. It's about the ordinary things you choose to keep doing, one unremarkable day at a time.